Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be going over the 923 patch notes. So I'm going to try to do this as fast as I can. There's obviously going to be a billion different changes. If we get close to an hour, I might have to split this up into two different episodes, but I'm going to try to focus on just what's said on the notes. I'll comment a little bit on how it's going to affect the meta and change a couple of different things around, but I'm going to save a lot of that for the tier list. So be sure to stay tuned for the tier list. I'll do an in-depth breakdown of what I think the metagame will be for each position at the start of the tier list. Then I'll give you my recommendation for the top 10 or 15 champions in that tier list. So I'm going to try to save a lot of the interpretation of very specific champions in the meta for that, although I will mention some of it here. So be sure to stay tuned for those tier lists. I will do a tier list for each role, and I'm going to try to do that all season, a tier list for each role on every patch, because I know people really like the tier list, and I think that I learn a lot while making the tier list too, so I'm going to try to do that. And I am getting over a cold, so sorry if I cough a little bit during this. But as always, if you enjoy the content, be sure to like and subscribe. And come check out the stream sometime. We start around 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a really fun, very chill stream. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. We have a lot of other very smart, knowledgeable people in there. You can have a real conversation there and just really have some fun, too, if you just want to talk about your day or just something off topic that you think could be interesting. I'm always up for just about whatever, as long as it's, cordial and, meets kind of the spirit of the stream. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started here. All right, so first up, they're going to talk about the elemental rifts and the dragons. I'll come out and say, first of all, that at first I wasn't really a big fan of these rifts, but I don't think they're going to be as consequential as I at first thought they would be because of some of the specific mechanics. And that's why I really wanted to wait until these actual patch notes came out with the full details of what's happening before I started making patch notes, tier lists, different analysis videos. I know a lot of other people try to jump the gun, and they started making videos about this like last week or even weeks ago. But those videos just aren't going to be accurate because there are some things in here that are very different from what was projected on the PBE. So, make sure that you focus up. If you've watched those other videos, this will be a little bit different most likely. Okay, so the transformation of the map thing that's going to happen, which we'll talk about here in a second. In general, I'm not a huge fan of it, as I just mentioned before, because it adds a lot of RNG into the game, and I just don't like a lot of RNG because it can really affect map picks. So, for example, a simple one would be Rengar is just a much different champion if the Water Dragon is the one that gets triggered versus the Earth Dragon. For example, just things that play out of the bush or things that play around line of sight really well at the bushes. I think that's probably potentially the most OP one. But the fact that it comes out after the third Drake means that it's not really going to come into play until like 20 or 30 minutes into the game, depending on how fast people kill dragons. And so I think it's not going to affect laning phase that much. And a lot of games, they're already going to be busted open by that point, and there's going to be ways to play around it. So I think it's going to have a lot less of an impact than people think because it's not going to trigger until the third Drake. So how it works is, actually, I guess it's after the second Drake dies. So it could be as early as around like 15 minutes if people take it like clockwork immediately. But realistically, it's probably going to be closer to 20 in a lot of games. So after the second Drake dies, then the third Drake that spawns is going to change the map. The map can only be changed once, and it's by whatever the third Drake is that spawns. And they have said, I don't remember if it's here or elsewhere, that the first three dragons are all different dragons. So you cannot get the same dragons in a row anymore. So that actually does remove a lot of the variance in the game right now. Because right now, if your team is behind and the enemy team gets like 3 Infernals in a row, it's very, very difficult to come back into the game. So that is removing a little bit of variance in order to add in a bit more variance in terms of the map positioning here. But that is removing some of the really hard snowball cases that there were with Infernal Dragons, or the feels bad if you get like 3 Wind Dragons or something and you're really far ahead. It's not that Wind is bad, it's just not as good as Infernal was. Okay, so third Drake spawns, it influences the map. They have pictures here that kind of show you what happens. Basically, if you get the Water Dragon, then a bunch of bushes show up on the map. I thought they had a better picture of that. Maybe they don't. But anyways, you get bushes around the map, and this shows up. Oh, here you go. Okay. So this shows up around the dragon pit. You can kind of see there. It shows up like here, over here, and I think they said that honey fruit spawns like extra around here too. So that's going to be a lot better for assassins, like your Rengar, obviously, but just anything that wants to be getting out of line of sight that's going to be a melee champion and that wants to be able to heal after an assassination, so it does a lot of burst damage and grabs that healing off the honey fruit, is really going to like that one potentially. Now, the Earth one adds in some extra barriers here, which, the thing is, a lot of fights don't break out in these areas. Like, you don't have to force a fight here if you don't want to, and it's kind of the same thing with the bushes. It's like a lot of fights, in-game fights, sometimes they happen around here, but a lot of times it's around Dragon or Baron Pit, or just like in a lane, somewhere in a lane. So it's very rarely around blue or red buffs, but it could happen. So, I mean, obviously things like this, anything that can pin into a wall, like Poppy, Vayne, that type of stuff, is going to really like this. And things that maybe like AoE, like choke points and things like that, like AoE mages, if you can force them to come through here. So if you're like baiting Baron or something and you force them into like this tight choke, and you have a bit more like line of sight stuff you can do too, where you can like, run around the wall and things like that. So it'll affect some things. And then you've got the Infernal one, which is you just kind of blow open the pit so people can, I don't know, run more freely through here, so there's less choke points. I think that one's probably the least consequential. Maybe, I guess, what is that supposed to, like, what kind of gameplay is that supposed to highlight? I guess that takes away walls, so people have less opportunities to hide. So just, like, maybe skill shot champions that want more vision, want more, like, clean shots, don't want to lose line of sight, maybe would like that. And you've got Windrake, which apparently when you step into this gust, it speeds you up a lot. I'm assuming kind of like Scuttle Crab when you walk through Scuttle, so that'll allow for faster rotations between lanes, which, could be pretty good for the most part. I think late game, a lot of times teleports kind of get you between lanes, but, that could certainly help out in some circumstances. So none of them are really that game-breaking, except for some cases. I think with the brush is the one that could potentially matter the most. But even then, once again, you don't really have to fight around this stuff if you don't want to later on in the game. And you're going to have a lot more vision, too. So by the time this spawns at 20 minutes, ideally your support is going to have vision around here. And these are places where you would have vision anyways, for the most part, right? Like, you're going to have this warded a lot of time if you're, like, on red side or whatever, and you've got it, you're pushing forward into the map. You're probably going to have this warded, and you're going to have this warded anyways, and that's going to see these bushes. So, I don't know. Like, this is a new bush here in the pit, but you have to, like, stand at the very back of the pit to be able to activate it. So, I was really hoping they would, like, do something like add a ramp at the back of Baron or at the back of Dragon, just to kind of fix the symmetry of the map so that late game blue side doesn't have a huge advantage on the Baron pit. But anyways, it's okay. So I don't think it's going to be the thing that a lot of people talk about, and it's going to look like the most interesting, but I don't think it's going to be that consequential. I could be wrong about that. Like I said, certain matchups like Rengar maybe with the brush, you do get a little bit of extra brush, it looks like, through here, through the river, so that could matter a bit, but I'll have to see it. Obviously, I haven't played it yet. I didn't spend any time on the PvE, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. It's interesting. The alcoves, people have been talking about this some too. I just really don't think it's going to be that big of a deal in most fights. The brush is a little bit shorter. So now you have 3 different brush that you have to ward potentially. Then you'd have to ward behind this as well. So champions that, can get around the vision, maybe some hook champions, maybe like Blitz can hang out like over here or something and evade your vision, and he has such a long hook that he, even if you have this warded or this warded or this warded, like he can find a spot to get into a bush that you can't ward and potentially hook you. So he's somebody, and because he has such a long hook anyways, he can probably hit from like here to here. So that'll kind of be a menace. Like Nautilus can't throw it through the wall. Maybe Thresh. But then, like, the other team could come down here. If you're trying to do that, if you're trying to position like that, like, let's say the wave's, like, right here, and you come down here, like, the other team could come down and just surround you in this bush. So, I don't know. Maybe there's some outplay potential. Someone like Vayne is probably going to like this, because then that's just more walls you can pin people into. I guess anyone that has some kind of wall interaction is going to be able to potentially take the fights down here. Maybe some AoE champions would like to take the fights down here. Maybe like a Zyro or a Brand or something might want to take it into the pit. But I just don't feel like a lot of people are going to opt into that. Like, you don't have to chase Zyra into the pit or Brand into the pit or whatever. If the minions, like, pass through here, at least some of them, like, that could potentially be interesting. Like, if they were, like, maybe 3 minions met right here and 3 minions met right here or something like that, that could be interesting. But I just don't see a lot of reason for people to opt into that. Maybe it does end up getting abused, though. I mean, I could, like, an Ivern or something could, like, put Brush here and connect these two. I still don't think you'd see Ivern support that. I don't know. I mean, jury's out. This is kind of the weirdest one where I'm not really sure. You know, Bard can come in from some weird angles, maybe. Like, you could Bard in, like, the jungler into this area, but they're going to see that. I don't know. It will come up, I'm sure. There will be some outplay potentials, but I just think most of the time, if people are getting ganked, they're just going to run straight away. Gankers are just still going to come from the same kind of paths they have. Supports are still going to engage in their same ways. So, like, this will be, like, an emergency, like, oh, crap, we can't quite get away. The jungler's, like, behind us, so we're going to try to, like, come in here and take it into the pit. I mean, that could force some interesting interactions. I just don't think it's going to come up a ton, but we'll see. Okay, river entrance bush. They're adding an extra brush here. Typically, you'll have something like this warded when you're trying to take objectives anyways. So instead of, like, warding here, you can just, like, ward here instead. I think it'll still give you vision of a lot of this area. So, you know, what you're going to lose out on is, like, if you put your ward here, you can probably see up to, like, blue area. Versus if you have to put your ward in the corner of this bush to grab the brush, if you even want to. Then you may not be able to see all the way up there the same way. So, we'll see. Once again, good for champions like Rengar or maybe a couple other champs to, like, benefit out of the brush. Maybe I think Nidalee gets, like, bonus movement speed into the brush or something. But overall, I don't think it's going to be a huge strategic deal. Okay, Dragon Souls. So, this is something that, when I was looking at information before, really got wrong about what was going to happen here. So, the first team to slay 4 elemental drakes gains a dragon soul. Okay? So you have to have 4 drakes dead. I read there was one Reddit post that was saying it had to be 4 of the same drakes. No. Once one team kills 4 drakes, they earn a dragon soul. And which soul is it going to be? Well, whenever that rift, or whenever the dragon event spawns that changes the terrain, every single dragon that comes after that is going to be that type of dragon. So let's say that you have Wind Dragon first, then you have Mountain Dragon, and then after the Mountain Dragon, Infernal is the next one to spawn, the third one. Every single dragon that happens after that is going to be Infernal, no matter what. So if you get 4 dragons, you're going to have 2 Infernals as part of that 4. If the other team gets the next 4 dragons, they're going to have 4 Infernal Dragons. And then they're going to get the Infernal buff. So that's how it works. The third dragon triggers a permanent lock in the dragon type. It changes the map and it triggers a lock. And then if you get 4 dragons, then you will get the benefit that matches the map. If that makes sense, because it's the one that you have the most of, which is going to be the one that matches the map. And the first 3 all have to be different, so you can't go like wind, 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 or even like wind, wind, water. It has to be something like wind, water, infernal. Okay? So that gives a little bit more predictability to the rest of the game. So the first little bit of the game is a bit unpredictable. You know, your first 2 dragons, you have some randomness there. The map's going to change in a random way around 15 to 20 minutes, probably after laning is done most of the time. And then that's going to dictate like how the rest of the game is going to go down and is going to be played. So, you know, Water Dragon is still going to give a huge edge against like poke teams. You know, Infernal Dragon's still going to be really strong. Teams that have really good ultimates that have like team fight comps are really going to like the Wind Dragon. We'll talk about that here in a second. And then like tank teams with like 3 or more tanks are really going to like Mountain. So it kind of lets you know what the dragons are going to be worth relative to your team. So you can decide if you want to trade towers for dragons or trade, you know, some kind of other priority for the dragon. So that is taking a little bit of AoE out of there, or not AoE, RNG out of there. So many acronyms. And so it's adding some, but it's also taking some out. So I think it'll be roughly a similar amount of RNG. And so after you get the dragon soul, which is killing the 4th dragon, then you get a different buff. So this is in addition to the normal dragon buffs that you get, and we'll talk about what those are here in just a second. I don't know why they don't talk about them first. I mean, let's just talk about them right now. So they are nerfing the dragon buffs a lot. Like the initial dragon buffs, they're nerfing them a ton. It says, just a minor balance pass, no big deal. We're just dropping the Infernal by 50%. As far as this benefit, it's going from 10% attack damage and ability power down to 5. At 2, it's going to 10 instead of 17. At 3, it's going to 15 instead of 24. If you get a 4th Infernal, which means that you are the losing team that did not trigger the event, and then you come back and get all 4 Infernals after that. So if the first person, the first team spawned water and wind, and then you come back and you get all 4 Infernals after that, then you get 20%, which is still, 1/6, like 17% less than you got with 3 before. So that is a massive, massive nerf to Infernal, which is probably fair because it was way stronger than most other dragons out there in a lot of situations. This one, Mountain Dragon, completely changed. So what this one does is it gives a certain percentage of armor and magic resist. And I believe this is total, not bonus. So that actually could be decent. But still, like early on, 8% extra armor and magic resist is not that big of a deal. I mean, even if you have 100 armor, it is giving out like an extra, 160 gold. And I guess the magic resist, if you have 100 armor, 100 magic resist, I guess you are getting like 300 extra gold. So it is significant. Obviously, it'll be a lot better for tanks than it would be, for a bunch of squishies. The Ocean Dragon is a pretty significant nerf. Now, not only is the number lower, now this is 6, 9, 12% of your missing health and mana per 5 when you haven't taken champion or turret damage with 8 seconds. So this looks like it works all the time, though, even in combat. So I don't know. This is going to be worse early game, but it's going to be a lot better late game. So I think that's probably fair because water is really oppressive early, but really good late. So it does not give you any mana back, which is good because that's so oppressive in the lane. But you still get 5% health, and that it looks like that can trigger in combat as well. So that's actually quite strong in combat that it can trigger. So Ocean is definitely a lot more relevant late game. And then Cloud Dragon also is changed to now it gives you cooldown reduction on your ult. So having a powerful ult now is going to be even more useful than usual. So it's 10, 20, 30, 40%. And it says it ignores the CDR cap. So this indicates to me that it's probably not multiplicative, that it's additive. Because I don't know why they would say that if it was additive. Or if it was multiplicative. So what that means is if you have 40% CDR... and then you get this for 40%, or like, let's just say you get one of these even, that 10% would take it up to 50% flat cooldown. So if it's a 1 minute cooldown, it would now be 30 seconds. Versus if it was multiplicative, it would take 40% first. If it was 100 seconds, it would go down to 60 seconds. And then it would take the 10%. Then it would take the 6 seconds off to make it 54 total seconds instead of 50 seconds. But this looks like it's additive rather than multiplicative. So if you get this, kind of a normal scenario would be you get I'll go ahead and say this, it's going to be really rare that you get more than 2 of these types of dragons. Like maybe 3. Because what would have to happen is like someone's got to trigger the first 2 and they're probably ahead in the game if that happens. And so if you trigger 2 and then you get the next 2, then you're only going to have 2. If you trigger the first 2 and then lose 1, then you're still only going to have 2 of the next one because it's going to trigger, that's going to take you to 4. So the only way that you ever get to 3 is if you're the comeback. If you're the person who didn't trigger the first 2 dragons. I guess it could be stolen. So you could have one team gets wind, one team gets water, next team gets like mountain, and then infernal spawns. I guess something like that can happen. But I think the way that I'm working through it, I'm pretty sure it's going to be extremely rare. Like you're going to have to come back if you're behind on dragons to get to like 4 is going to be almost impossible. That means that you didn't get the first 2 and you only got the next 4. 3 is going to be rare because that means that you may have stolen one of the first dragons. but the other team got 2 to your 1, and then you came back and got 3. And then the most likely scenario is that you have 2 because you got the first 2 and then you get the next 2. Or you got the first 2 and then the other team like gets 1 of them and then you get the next 2. So anyways, so the 40% CDR dream, you know, the dream of the 32% armor and magic resist is going to be extremely rare for that to happen. So overall, I think that Ocean is going to be more all-around impactful throughout the game, and I think Cloud is going to be way more impactful throughout the game too. You're going to be highly incentivized. This also favors tanks, by the way, because it's of your missing health. Yeah, so obviously tanks are typically going to have a lot more health than other people, and Mountain also favors tanks. And if it's a tank with a really good ultimate, Ornn, Maokai, Sejuani, you know, things like that, a lot of the top end tanks that you're going to play in the jungle and top usually have a pretty high impact ult with a lot of CC, then they're also going to benefit from Cloud. So 3 of these dragons, 2 of them like 100% benefit tanks more. 1 of them most likely benefits tanks more. You know, a lot of champs have useful ults, but I feel like tanks, a big part of like the mainstream tanks is that they have a pretty high impact ult typically. So 2 with a slight edge to tank on Cloud, and then Infernal is going to favor damage dealer. So I think the Dragon Shift is definitely going to favor tanks a little bit. Okay, so then the Dragon Souls themselves. Soul number 1. So if you get the Infernal, so the Infernal is the thing that spawns on the 3rd dragon. You get the next 2 or whatever. Every 3 seconds, your next damaging attack or ability on an enemy triggers a small explosion that deals 90 plus some amount to the target and nearby enemies. So if they're clumped up, it could do extra. So that's pretty good. I mean, this can trigger in combat multiple times. So in a long fight, you might trigger this 2 or 3 times. And if people are clumped up, it does a lot. Now, the scaling is not that high. You'll notice that it does have bonus health in there too. So if you're a tank with like 2,000 bonus health, then you will deal 60 extra damage on this also. So it does have some tank scaling there. Just like Mountain Soul does have attack damage and ability power scaling on the resistances. So they're trying to make it fair as they can for other people. But yes, that'll add a pretty good chunk of extra damage in there. That's still going to be really strong. I still think Infernal in most cases will probably be the strongest, but it kind of depends. It's gonna be a lot more dependent than it used to be. But Infernal's kind of the really good catch-all type of thing. And then the Mountain Soul is going to give you a shield for 225. So that's going to negate with how armor and magic resist works. I mean, if you have 100 armor, that's going to block like 450 damage or so. Shields are really strong. If you've never watched any of the other content on my channel, shields are really, really strong because they scale with resistances. So if you have 100 armor, then the shield value is doubled against physical targets. So for example, it would take 450 damage, physical damage, to break a 225 shield. If you have 100 magic resist, then it would take 450 magic damage to break a 225 shield. There's a reason Janna was 55%, for, win rate for like 8 years straight or something until they nerfed her like 20 times a couple of seasons ago. But anyways, yeah, that's really strong. So this 90 damage, I mean, they're going to have to hit you like 5 times. It's going to have to be a 15-second fight, and they're going to have to hit you like 5 times to break this thing. Probably, if you're a tank. If you're not a tank, they're going to have to hit you probably at least 3 times. So for fast fights, this is definitely going to be better than the Infernal one, I think. But for longer fights, Infernal is going to win out. Because this only replenishes every 5 seconds if you're not in combat. Ocean, dealing damage, heals you for 180. And restores 90 mana over 3 seconds. Now, this is important to note. Minions and monsters trigger this. So if you're just hitting minions, then it's still going to heal you for 30 over time. Now, I don't know how fast this ticks. If it's evenly spread over 3 seconds, that's not that great. It's like 60 per second. It's okay, but I think that like Mountain's going to be probably better. I don't know. It's still going to be pretty good though. I mean, it's going to be very good for Poke Wars. Hey, thanks so much for the sub, Irakli. I appreciate it. Then Cloud Drake gives you 10% movement speed for everybody, which is nice. And then after casting your ult, get an additional 30% movement speed for 3 seconds on a 30-second cooldown. Okay, so Nidalee can't just keep spamming this and getting movement speed. This just feels really weird, like... Because only some champs really want a lot of movement speed after they ult. Like, you know, on someone like a Kennen, of course this is going to be great, or like a Kled or something. You know, like there are certain champs that want to run in. But on some champs, it's going to be like Jinx rockets somebody. I mean, I guess you still get the movement speed. I don't know. I think that this whole ulti thing is really like going to favor certain classes of champions over others. So I don't know about the Cloud Dragon to say, okay, everybody likes movement speed, but I just don't know that predicating it on an ult is going to be a deal. And this is why they changed Nimbus Cloak as well. If you're wondering, like they explain that down below, but it's because Cloud is giving so many bonuses to ultimates that they decided to change Presence of Mind and Nimbus Cloak, so that it wasn't like too over the top. So pretty good buffs, but once again, you have to have 4 dragons. Keep in mind, even if you get every single dragon, you know, pretty much on spawn, I think they're still, I think they're 6 minutes each. They may have dropped them to 5 minutes each. Okay, it is a 5 respawn. Baron's 6. So even if like you get it like immediately at 5 minutes and then you get 4 in a row, like the minimum you could get that at would be 25 minutes. And let's be real, like you're not going to get it on time every single time, and you know, most games. If that's already happening, you're probably going to win. So if you do get 4 dragons, it's probably going to be at 30 to 35 minutes into the game. And like this kind of change here is really heavily incentivizing like team fight play. Because like these drakes, if you get one of these things, it's going to be really good. So anyways, you have to have all 4. And so it can't be 2 and 2. It can't be you get 2, the enemy gets 2. Then nobody's going to get it. So I would say, you know, I would venture to say that in like maybe 60 or 70% of games, you're not going to see someone with a Dragon Soul. Because I just don't think, even if someone gets every dragon almost like clockwork, it's not going to be till 30 minutes, and the game's probably going to be over by then. Maybe not. But even if they steal like just 1 dragon from you, it's going to set you back by at least 5 minutes. So, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, it could be interesting if you want to try to go for like a Baron versus if you want to go for even one of these Dragon Souls. The Soul might be worth more than the Baron if you think you can hold off a Baron. So it's an interesting strategic choice. Dragons, however, are much, much easier to kill in the early game. And this sucks because Vision is going to be much, much more difficult to handle. So people are definitely going to be camping the hell out of bot lane. And trying to sneak dragons. So getting lane priority is going to be a huge deal, because if you ever see that jungler on the top side of the map, like the enemy jungler, you can just go over there and kill this thing so quickly. I mean, it's got like a third less health. It's gone from 3,500 health down to 2,600. So that's a lot less health overall. So you can kill this thing really quickly. So things like, you know, Nunu obviously can take it quickly. Fiddlesticks, Vi... there are a lot of champions, Kha'Zix. A lot of champs are going to be able to take this really, really quickly in the game, and so you have to try to get priority in the lane, and you have to try to pressure so that they can't get it. So it is going to scale up over time, but early game it's going to be really, really easy to solo. And if you just get a team over there, like it'll be done in a second. You know, even if like a jungler's sitting there, like okay, I got time to do golems, they're doing dragons. Like no, if you spot them, it's basically gone already. If you aren't there like immediately, because you're probably going to have like 15 seconds or less, maybe 10 seconds or less, depending on how many champions are over there to kill this thing early on. So it's going to be a really big deal. Okay, Elder Dragon. Now this is something that everyone's tripping out about. They're like, oh my god, the Elder's OP. Here's the thing. You have to trigger the Dragon Soul first. So that right there, like we said, I think it's probably going to be, if it even shows up in games, a lot of times, probably 30 minutes. At least, I mean, just go back and look at your games. I mean, let me just look and see here. Does it say how many dragons? Now, granted, people are not going to have the same kinds of priorities here. I don't know if it says. Okay, 3 dragons. 3-0. 20-minute game. 3 dragons. 2-2. 1-3. 3-1. 1-3. That's in a 35-minute game right there. And I try to go for dragons. I tell my team, get dragon now. Like, as soon as, like, dragon spawns, if there's any way we can go after it, you know, or as soon as we see that top lane, we go for it. Nope. 0-1. See if I can grab a couple more here. Obviously haven't done, like, super hot the last week or so. Okay, 4. So that's 1 game in 11. And I won't keep going. But y'all see what I'm saying? Like, I think that me even saying it's going to be, like, maybe every 70%, or, like, it's not going to happen in 75% or 70% of the games, might even be generous. Like, you're not going to see this a lot of the time. You're not going to see it. So, like, we had 1 game out of 11 there. That's whatever, like 9% or something, where 1 team got 4 dragons. And that's not even the Elder. You have to get 4 dragons, and then the Elder spawns an additional, like, 5 minutes after that. So now you're talking bare minimum, even if a team gets dragon, like, somehow manages to one-shot it in, like, 1 second at 5 minutes and gets every single dragon like clockwork on the money, you could maybe spawn this at, like, 30 minutes. So, I mean, I guess, let's see, 5, 10, 15, 20. So, I guess 25 would be the absolute earliest because it would start at 5 minutes flat. But realistically, I'm telling you guys, you're not going to see this thing in most games. Like, everyone's like, oh my god, it's OP. If you get this, you win the game. You should win the game because it's so rare to get 4 dragons without the enemy team, like, taking any of them. And they can take the Elder. So this is another thing that your team can hard throw on. So if, for example, you are really far ahead, you've got your 4 dragons, you spawn this thing, and then your jungler misses smite, the enemy comes in and, like, miracle smites it, and then they come over and take Baron, they could just win the game off of that. If you get Baron plus this Elder, you're probably going to win. So this is another way that your team could potentially throw. So it still does the true damage component, but if they go below 20% threshold, then they just get executed. So that's going to be really good against, like, shields. It's going to be really good, I think, against invulnerability. I don't know if if someone's in, like, a Kindred ult or something, I don't know what is going to happen. Because, like, it's going to keep trying to trigger over and over again because there's no cooldown on it. I don't know what happens with that. So I guess the dragon might just keep throwing stuff at him. Oh, okay, it says... Okay, so they... with Kindred, then they're not going to get executed. If they get dealt a freaking grain of damage again, though, they're going to get executed probably. Okay, so it lasts 3 seconds instead of 2.5, and then Baron also lasts, or 3 minutes rather than 2.5, and then Baron also lasts 3 minutes instead of, I think it used to last 4. And then it's 6 minutes after one team kills the 4th elemental, and then a 6-minute respawn. So, once again, you're not going to see this in the vast, vast majority of games, I think. Like, 30% or less of games where you see this. It could even be, less than 20%. Going to be very, very low amount of games. Now, I do expect games to slow down a little bit because I do think that tanks are going to come back. More on that, in the tier list. But overall, I think that it was 3.5 minutes. But overall, I think that you're just not going to see this in a lot of games. And the team that gets 4 of these, like, the only way you're going to get 4 is if you're super far ahead. Like, maybe the enemy stole 1, and it's like, 40 minutes into the game, you have 4 dragons, so they're 1, and you manage, like, Elder spawns, that might be the type of situation where you would see it. But a lot of games are just going to be, like we saw there, 2-2 or, like, 3-1, that type of stuff, and the game's over. Although, once again, people are going to be paying more attention to it, so there will probably be some more dragons that go down, but anyways. Okay, top lane influence. We recently watched a marathon of Hashinishin's stream and decided that top is no longer a strong role, and we feel sorry for them and want to buff them up. No, that's not what it says. But I'm just like, I'm having to, like, who thinks this? Who thinks, you know what? I think the solo lanes are really weak right now. You know, I just don't understand how they can carry, so let's go ahead and buff up mid and top. I think bot lane's just way too strong in this meta. You know, like, here's the thing. Top lane is, like, early game. If it's a really early game centric meta, yes, top lane is one of the weaker lanes, as I've said on stream several times. But the reason is not because the champions aren't strong. The reason is because they can't macro as well, you know, unless they have, like, really good teleport use. But it's like they are strong champions up there, you know, like the Garen, Ryze. Like, there's a lot of champs up there that can be really good. But the problem is, if your bot lane just hard feeds, if your bot lane goes like 0-8, then it doesn't matter if you're 2-0 top lane. So that's the thing. It's not that bot lane's powerful per se. It's that everyone picks on the bot lane and hard camps it, and the game is decided through the bot lane. So it's not that, like, bot lane is influential because it's strong. It's bot lane's influential because it's too weak, if that makes sense. Because you can bully it. Because most AD carries can't fight you back or do anything if you camp it for so long in the game. So think about this. Making bot lane even weaker and buffing up the solo lanes is not going to fix that problem, because bot lane's still the weakest, so everyone's going to camp bottom, and games are still going to be decided by bot lane. Does that make sense? So I don't know how that doesn't make sense to Riot, right? Like, the problem is that bot lane's weak, therefore it's the most influential lane because everyone preys on it most of the time. Everyone's like, you know, all of the tigers and lions and stuff, and bot lane's just like these little gazelles, like, running around, you know, just trying to hug their tower and not get murdered. Like, that's pretty much what it's been for, like, the back half of the season. Just 3 or 4 man camp bottom. So, I don't agree with why top lane is the problem. So, you know more than they already do, so they know this. What? We're spawning Rift Herald a bit earlier and letting her respawn once so that teams don't completely abandon their top laners in favor of bottom lane presence. Yeah, but you missed the part that you, like, really, really highly incentivize people to try to get these dragons and get to the big buffs for late game. I mean, the earlier buffs aren't as good as they were in a lot of cases, but, like, the late game buffs are crazy. So, okay, but the Rift Herald thing is a good idea, because this is going to create a trade-off that might be worth it a little bit more in the top lane. So the initial spawn is at 8 minutes, and then it respawns in 6 minutes. So you can only get one respawn of it, I believe, right? So if you kill it at 8, it'll respawn at 14. Yeah, then it goes away before 20. So yeah, you can basically get 2 Rift Heralds now. And then it still has a crazy amount of health. I mean, look at this. Like, someone was arguing with me on stream. This was probably like a month ago. They were saying, I was saying, Dragon's too easy to kill. It's way easier to kill than Rift. They're like, no, it's not. It's not easier to kill. It's like, dude, bro, look. Like, the thing has 10,000 health. Dragon had 3,400. Like, a third of the health that Rift Herald does. Like, it's obviously takes way, way more time. I mean, I can't even believe this was a debate for a while, but anyway, so they're knocking it down a little bit, but it's still like 3 or 4 times as difficult to kill as Dragon solo. So a lot of junglers are not going to want to invest that time. It's really risky to try to do it by yourself because it takes so long that if anyone spots you out and comes in and kills you and just takes it from you, it can be rough. Now, it is going to be easier to kind of solo it to poke the eye, but it's still going to take a long time, other than like maybe like champions like Nunu. But at least you have something maybe you can counter it with. So you have less time to pick it up, but you don't have to stand there for as long to pick it up also. The health is a lot lower when you put it in the lane. It does about the same amount of damage, but the headbutt self-damage is 66% of the current health. So it's gonna die pretty quickly after one headbutt. So getting through like multiple towers with it is gonna be much much tougher. So this is interesting that it can spawn twice, but at the same time, I think that it's not gonna matter. Everyone's still gonna camp bottom. Okay, minion XP. Now this is something everyone's tripping out about too, where everyone, people are saying, "Oh my God, bot lane, it's so nerfed." It's like, guys, look, it's literally 2% less minions. That means if you like are present in the lane for 100 minions that die on average, then it's like you're there for 2 less. I mean, when is that breakpoint going to matter? Like, I don't know. Maybe it does matter. Maybe, like, by level 6 or something like that, maybe, like, it's going to take you one more minion to hit 6, and the jungler can come in and capitalize on that. Or, like, the mid laner is going to come in. They're going to get, like, 5 steps closer to bot lane before you can kill that one extra minion to make up the difference. It's like... I don't know. I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference. Yes, the solo lane XP... is up a little bit. Like, and I mean a little bit. Like, this is like, melees are 2 extra XP. This is not even a full experience point on the casters. Who thought it was a good idea to make fractional XP? And then the cannon minion is literally 1 extra XP. And then bot lane... So this is going down a little bit. 2% slower. Okay. So anyways, it's not really going to make... I don't think. I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. Maybe, maybe not. It depends on... They're changing so much with the jungle. It's going to be hard to tell, like, how the experience is going to roll in the jungle and, like, what the timing's going to be. But I don't think it's going to be that big of a change. Although I don't, in general, think that they should be buffing top and mid lane. If anything, they should buff top lane somehow. I don't know how they would... It doesn't even make any sense as far as, like, minions. But mid lane definitely does not need to be buffed. But anyways, whatever. That's fine. If they want to buff top, I don't know. People already take teleport everywhere. I don't know how you buff top. I mean, it's got to be the map. Like, Rift Herald just has to be of similar value to Dragon. And that's it. And it's just not. Or... No, that wouldn't work either. They already have, I think, a weaker... No, they made top lane... Or didn't they make bot lane... Isn't bot lane more vulnerable? Doesn't it have less armor like the towers, the turrets? Early game? I think they should switch that and make top lane more vulnerable. Like, that might be a good thing. Let me just look that up real quick. I'm pretty sure they changed that to stop... outer turret. Passive... Fortification does not apply to the bot lane turret. Expires after 5 minutes. Yes, so they should switch this. They should make bot lane turret more difficult to kill, and then make top lane turret easier to kill. That would help out a ton, because now if you go top and you get a kill, then you're more likely to get more plates or actually get the tower more often than if you go bot lane. Because if your top lane is up there taking a risk at like ganking top and dragon's available, you just gave up a dragon. So it's like really risky. So I think they should make the top lane towers a lot weaker, or at least somewhat weaker in the early game, so that would balance out. That would say, okay, it's worth it to take a risk up here because you're going to get more plates potentially. Versus if you go bot lane right now, what it always is if you get a successful play bot lane, you're probably going to kill 2 people instead of just 1 person. You're going to have 3 people bottom instead of 2 people top if you gank top, which means you're going to take tower plates faster. That also means you're going to be able to get dragons, which are the most important early game objective. So everyone's still going to camp bottom. So what they should do if they wanted to balance it out is put fortification on top or mid. Just allow bottom to be more difficult to kill. Okay, but they did that a long time ago, if you didn't know about that, to make the towers asymmetrical so that people wouldn't lane swap. Okay. Turret plating, bulwark resistance. Okay, so they're trying to stop blowouts on the turrets. So if there are more people on the turret, then it's going to get extra armor and magic resist. So it's going to slow down if there are 3 people bottom attacking the turret. That'll help out some. Door and shield, probably not going to matter. Weaker for ranged, stronger for solo champ. So this will help out maybe top lane and really tough matchups if it's like melee versus ranged. Door and shield will be a little bit more useful. Which more do we have? Yeah, we're probably going to have to split this up. I may just stop and go into the items in a separate video. I think I'm going to have to do that. So we'll just end up with the jungle here, and then we'll do items and runes in a separate video. Because, I mean, it's just like an insane amount of information in these patch notes. And I want to give you guys some real analysis and not just read it without thinking into it. Even though I am abridging it a little bit just because I'm trying to put as much as I can into the tier list coming up as far as like individual champions and how it'll affect them. Okay, jungle pacing. So, first of all, as everyone knows, I'm not a jungle expert. But they are doing a lot of stuff that I've been calling for a long time, and a lot of high-end junglers have also been talking about this on, the various talk shows that I hear them on. Hotline League and stuff like that I used to listen to a lot more. The biggest thing, one of the biggest things here, that I think is going to be helpful, and they did not have this in the preseason, or like the whatever, the PBE, at least as far as I could tell. I've never seen this before in anything, and this is a huge, huge deal. Jungle items no longer grant additional XP on monster kill if you're behind in levels. So epic monsters still have innate catch-up. I think epics are just dragon and baron. I don't, it might be blue and red, I don't know. But either way, like, a lot of the catch-up experience is gone, which is awesome. So here's the thing, they changed this a long time ago in the game. They gave catch-up experience so that jungles would not snowball out of control. But what that has really done is that has made the optimal jungle path in a lot of cases super gank heavy, so that you can rubber band your gold and actually get more efficiency out of your camps. So like a really simple example of this, and this is going to be like really oversimplified, but let's just say that like each one of your camps gave, I don't know, 100 gold, right? And however, if you're down a level, then you're going to gain 10% more gold out of that if you're down in levels from the enemy jungler. So what you can do then is go down and just camp and just like gank bottom lane, come up behind them, get their flash, get all of that stuff, just go hang out, wait another 30 seconds in the bush or something, wait on the wave to push back up, repeat gank after their flash is down, get a kill, no problem. It's like, well, you just spent about 45 seconds to a minute in the bot lane just like hard camping them. And now you've fallen behind in camps of the enemy jungler. So you're going to be, level 3, and the enemy jungler is going to be level 4. Well, now you can just go back through your jungle, and all of your jungle camps are going to be worth 110 gold now instead of 100 gold. So not only did you dramatically swing the advantage in the favor of bot lane, but you're going to catch up in terms of golden experience once you go through and clear. You're going to have a little bit of a tempo disadvantage because they're already going to have theirs cleared, but you've already had a much more successful gank. And so even if they full clear their camps in order and they get to level 4 first, and they get a successful kill in the top lane, for example, you're still going to be ahead. Like, because the order of operations, you ganked first, and then you got your camps, you're actually still getting more golden experience, even though you both did the exact same thing. You just opted to play a better early game champion, and you just hard camped, and you got the advantage first. And because of the rubber banding effect, because you were behind, now when you catch back up to even, you're actually going to be ahead. So it's just like, if you're thinking to yourself, like, why the hell does that even make any sense? It doesn't. Like, the only reason they did that is just so that if you're getting smurfed on by a Kha'Zix or something like that, and he comes into your jungle and kills you 3 times, then you can maybe get back into the game by farming your jungle out and catching up with the Kha'Zix. When in reality, if that happens, you're probably going to lose anyways, most of the time. So, I don't know. I think they created a lot more problems and just like really weird, counterintuitive situations like that by doing this rubber banding instead of actually solving like the smurfing problem. If they want to stop the smurfing problem, I don't know. It's a lot more complicated than that. But anyways. So now they are making the small camps spawn in 2 minutes instead of 2.5. So if you don't farm those camps on time, then you're actually losing out on a lot of potential gold. This is going to help the power farm junglers out a lot. You know, things like Mundo, Olaf, Nunu, stuff like that are going to be much, much stronger here. And the buff camp respawn icons change from... So now you can actually see when your camps are going to spawn too, which I think is really nice, especially for most junglers. Yeah, challengers are going to cry and say, oh, well, you know, the bookkeeping is what makes me really good. Like, noob junglers need to learn how to play, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, come on, man. Like, it's not going to matter for challengers anyways, because they already track all this stuff. It's not going to matter for pros, but it is going to matter for Timmy, you know, that's like Silver 3, trying to learn jungle. It just makes the game a lot more friendly. People have been crying about this forever when they like put timers on Dragon and Baron. It's like, League should not be a game where you have to have like a spreadsheet, you know, or just like a pencil and paper on the side where you're like writing down all these timers. It shouldn't be about like accounting and bookkeeping all the time, I don't think. So anything that can show that visually, I think is really good. So anyways, I'm all for that. I think it's great. You know, if that's the only reason you think you're better than other people is because you keep track of timers, I mean, I guess that's going to suck. It feels bad, but I think it's a good quality of life change for a lot of people. Okay. And now they are, like, the Krug side is still the strongest in terms of gold. They said they were neutralizing it, but they're not. I mean, they are knocking a lot off. They're knocking almost 90... experience off of Krugs, and they're knocking the gold down by a little bit, by 120, but the first clear is not as big. They're taking down like the wolves a little bit too. I don't know why they're nerfing the wolves. Base gold is up on the wolves though, but the experience is down. Gromp is up, the health is going to make it harder to kill. Base XP is up 20. So they're taking 20 off of wolves. They're adding 20 to Gromp. So that's like net neutral. I guess they are taking 90 off of Krugs, and they're taking 20 off of Raptors. And they're lowering the gold on Raptors. So it is going to neutralize the lanes a little bit more so that, you know, junglers might occasionally want to go topside instead of like constantly sitting on bot 24/7. Will this actually happen? Maybe. I think a lot of people might just skip Krugs now. A lot. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, they are still really good, like the 160 XP. Gromp is better, though, and it's going to respawn faster. And Krugs just kind of takes forever for a lot of people to kill. So, we'll see. I think that will change up the routes quite a bit to where people are probably going to ignore Krugs more and just go for earlier ganks. Just go for, like, level 2 gank into Scuttle. Or into Invade or something like that. So... I think ultimately that's probably good. If anything that's going to get people to just not 4-person camp bottom, I think it's going to be good for the game. And I say that, you know, not just as someone who's a support that hates getting camped every single game, but just in general for balance. I mean, that's going to make top lane feel a lot more important if they get to, like, react to ganks, you know, and stuff like that. Get to participate in the game and not just play a 1v1 up there that just doesn't matter because it doesn't have as big of an impact as bot. Okay. Alright, and then I think that's where we'll go ahead and stop. So I will get into the items in the next portion of the video, and we're going to split this up into 2 just so we can keep them under an hour. And the next portion, I'm going to release them at about the same time, though. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, we'll do the lethality items, the support items, and then we'll do the runes in the next patch as well. And I'll give you sort of my thoughts on how this could change the meta a little bit. Although, once again, you know, we'll talk about this a lot with the support tier list and the ADC tier list a bit more. But anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. You know, a lot of those changes to the jungle and the dragons and some of the other things are going to be interesting. They are going to shake up the meta, hopefully a little bit. I kind of fear that it might still be camp bottom all the time, but at least ADCs will be valuable late game if tanks start coming back, which I suspect they will. So, I think it's going to be return of the ADCs, return of the tanks, return of, like, the Jinxes, and return of the Enchanters. That's what I think. We'll go into that more in future videos. Anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time.